Hey guys, so welcome to step 4. This is my origins of DNA. I'm actually going to call it life, my origins of life notes. This part is basically answering, what is life? Where did life come from, right? Big philosophical questions. Well, scientists have had a lot of thought about where on earth does life actually come from. So one of the first ideas was called spontaneous generation. So spontaneous generation really sounds like the words that make it up, is basically just life arises magically. Alright? And by magically, I mean that there needs to be no life around. So it can arise from non-life. So basically, like, if you're looking at a piece of bread and, you know, you leave it out for a while and it becomes disgusting because there's mold all over it, right? Mold is a living thing. So according to this theory, right, the mold just appeared. Didn't need anything to grow, it just magically is there. So scientists had some questions about this. They're like, really? Is this true? So they ran a couple of experiments, like they basically put a piece of bread or, you know, anything else and sequestered it so it didn't have access to any other life. And was like, let's see if this is actually true. Well, nothing grew when it was just trapped. But as soon as they exposed it to air, things started to grow. So this became another theory of that life can't arise from non-life. Life has to arrive from other life. So as soon as the bread, let's say, so they trapped it for a while, nothing grew, and then they exposed it to air. Well, I know this sounds kind of gross, but there's a bunch of like little tiny living things in the air that we can't really see, but they are alive, like bacteria. I mean, bacteria is all over the air. It's all over your skin all the time, crawling all over you. I know you're really excited about that. So as soon as the bread came in contact with the air that has all these living things, that's when the mold could start growing because it came from another living thing. All right. So these were the two starting, and then we came up with another one. This is called the primordial soup hypothesis. I know that's kind of a weird name, primordial soup hypothesis. So they started to wonder, well, this means that like there had to be life all along, right? But like how did the first life come to be? You know, sort of like that chicken or egg kind of conundrum. So they started to wonder, well, could life arise from non-life, not spontaneously, but there actually be kind of a method of it? So they were wondering if you started with chemicals, just the chemicals which are non-living, could you then end up with cells based on a series of chemical reactions? So this is going from non-life to life, but chemically. So this was their question. They're like, would this actually happen? So what they did, this graduate student named Miller paired up with his professor Urey, and they performed an experiment that's literally called the Miller-Urey experiment. What they did is actually really, really cool. So they started to simulate early atmospheric conditions on Earth. So they simulated these conditions, and remember, they're starting with chemicals, they're starting with water, like all non-living things, and they're seeing, okay, if we, you know, just still have like the lightning that's there, all these different chemicals together, if we let it sit there under all of these conditions, could we chemically actually make something? So what the results were was, one of them was that when they started with chemicals, they actually produced amino acids. Now, this was huge. Like, this was a huge discovery. So amino acids, remember, this is a biomolecule. This is a building block of life. This is the building block of proteins, right? One of the most critical things of life. So they actually simulated that, yes, if you have all these chemicals in one place and you let them be under these early atmospheric conditions, then yeah, you can build the building blocks of life. And now they've taken this theory and they've attached it or tried it in different scenarios, like not on Earth. So this is like the fundamental theory that's driving, like, is there life on other planets? Can that happen? Like, they've researched this on meteors and other planets that they've had access to. So it's expanding, like, is there life on other planets? And this is scientifically how you back that up. Now, the other part of this, the fourth one, this is called the endosymbiotic theory. Now, this also has to do sort of with the primordial soup. So the primordial soup says that there's like a bunch of things in one place. So we're saying, what if we start not just with chemicals, but we have other cells in this primordial soup, like everything there. So the endosymbiotic theory kind of explains how we go from a very simple cell to a very complex cell. So let's say in this primordial soup, we have a cell, like a bigger cell, but it's complex, and a little kind of bacteria cell. And let's say this bigger cell engulfs the smaller cell. Now, instead of just eating, like digesting it with enzymes, they actually live together, right? So it's now absorbed. So this is one of the theories, that a cell actually took in the mitochondria. Remember, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So this says that like a eukaryotic cell at one point engulfs the mitochondria, which is bacteria, and instead of just eating the mitochondria, it let the mitochondria live inside of it. And now, in our cells, and all of us benefit from this, we now all have the mitochondria, and that actually fuels us with energy for our cell. So this was just the explanation of how we went from a simple cell, these simple cells, to a complex cell. So imagine literally, like, this is saying, like, if I were to eat something, like if I were to eat a bird, I would then have the ability to fly. So like, this is really, really crazy, but it's kind of possible based on the evidence that we've seen inside of ourselves of like the mitochondria having its own DNA, and there's been loads of studies on this if you want to look it up. But the theory in essence is like, okay, I ate something and now I have its ability. But it's super duper cool, and based on the research, it seems to be fairly accurate. So these are our 4 theories of basically how life started. You know, take your pick, but it's been a really, really interesting story that scientists are still working on. Alright, you are going to work on this part next. You are going to be drawing your own interpretations of each of these wonderful theories of life, of how life actually started. And this is your last part. Remember, when you're done with all of this, you can turn it in and get topic 2. Enjoy.